I'm joined by Jeremy Medlin from Clyth MacLeod Business Sales today. The topic that we're going to cover is things that you need to consider when you are in business and what you can do to prepare to sell years before the fact so that you can get the best purchase price and the quickest sale. So Jeremy, in your experience, what sorts of things could business owners be doing now to think about that big day?
So the most important thing that I think is the key thing to remember is what you can verify is what you can sell. The biggest mistake that we see business owners making is they can't produce information quickly and easily. So often it's often basic things like GST receipts, financial accounts, running everything through the books so that it's a fair representation of what the business is. Basically, every buyer that you meet is going to be nervous about buying your business and they're looking for reasons not to buy. So it's important to be able to reproduce the information that I guess you would want if the situation is reversed. So oftentimes people just think providing the financial accounts is enough, but then they have all this other data that could be really useful to the buyer, such as sales information, different segments, what's selling, margins across different products. There's a whole raft of information that could be helpful to a buyer, and it's important for lots of different reasons. It's not just getting the buyer comfortable, but maybe that buyer would need finance. So then you're not just and this is where you come in, I guess, but it's not just convincing the buyer to purchase a business. It's convincing, you've also got to convince the lender. So, and the lender is not going to go see the business, right? No. So it's about painting it as good a picture as you possibly can for the lender as well. So it comes back to you can sell what you can verify. I'd say that's the most important thing, and it's where a lot of people fail. Like, I'll give you an example from a personal experience. Is you can. I remember a business where the owner produced the accounts and everything up front. That was great, and it wasn't until the due diligence period later on when the buyer requested individual sales information, and all this 10 years of data came out. And I said to him, why wasn't this made available at the start? It would have made my job just so much easier, you know. And a lot of times that information exists, but people don't think to produce it. So I see that would be the single most important thing is providing a fair picture of the business that gives buyers a degree of comfort. That would be the most important thing.
And they're going to then take that information off to their accountant, and the accountant's going to comb through as well and justify the purchase price.
You know, like I mentioned, the finances there you need to convince, but it's also accountants and lawyers. It's not just the individual buyer that you need to convince. And often the accountants, they're not going to see the business. So even if the purchaser has a good understanding of the business because they've been there, the accountant needs that understanding as well. So
and they're notoriously conservative, so
exactly,
they're
because
looking for reasons why it's not worth that purchase price.
Exactly, and accountants and lawyers, they don't care if you buy the business. They still get paid the fee, and they move on. They're not going to want to take on any additional risk by telling you it's worth buying if they can see some risk. So it's really important as a seller to provide as much information as you can, and going back for as long as you can as well, because it sort of leads into something else we're going to talk to about durability. And I guess the longer, and it's a generalisation, but generally the longer a business has been running, the more likely it is to be able to continue running in the future. And of course there's times where that's not true. You know, you think like video stores, for example, where they just disappeared overnight, even if they've been operating for years. But in general, the longer a business has been running, so information that goes back for a long period of time is always important as well.
So aside from the financial information, that obviously keeping it accurate and consistent from day one, or from today at least.
And as granular as possible as well. So you know, if you can provide annual data, but monthly data, weekly data, as much as possible, you can't have too much information.
Yeah, absolutely. So what other sorts of things? We touched on some really cool ones about equipment and various things. So
so there's different parts to a business sale. So obviously you mentioned the equipment, which would be like the tangible assets, and then you've got the stock, and then you've got the difference in the selling price between the tangible and the difference between the selling price and the tangible assets is known as goodwill or intangible assets. So what you want to do is you want to have a business where there's systems and staff in place where that goodwill can easily be transferred to a new owner, if that makes sense. So there's plenty of examples where that goodwill can't be transferred over, and an example of that is we're essentially running our own business here as business brokers, but I can't go sell that to you myself as a business broker because it's impossible for that goodwill to transfer over. So if you're selling a business, you want to ensure that ability to transfer over the goodwill, and there's things that you can do to increase the chances of doing that, and getting good systems and everything in place is a big part of that. I think I'll give you the better systems that you have and the easier the goodwill is to transfer over, the broader your buyer pool is.
Yeah.
So for example, there's certain businesses that I know are very, very good, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with myself buying them. So if you think like an engineering company, it might be making all the money in the world, but if you had to be a qualified engineer to take over, then I wouldn't stand a chance in running it. But say if that same engineering company, if the person taking over could just run the company as a manager and have the qualified engineers under them, then it suddenly increases your pool of buyers. So having those systems in place can dramatically increase the ability to transfer over the goodwill and the durability of the business. And that's the goodwill side of things, but then there's the equipment maintenance side as well, which which you spoke about earlier, and that's I guess, you can, again, it can be making all the money in the world, but if a buyer walks into the business and just looks around and sees that everything needs to be replaced, then suddenly they need to calculate that into their purchase price, into their offer price, and it may become less attractive to them. So what we're sort of saying here is everything that we're going back to is you're almost putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer.
Yeah.
You're inverting it and you're reversing it, and you're putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer and thinking what they would want in that situation. You've got to be careful with the equipment thing, not to go overboard and not to overcapitalise. You've got to be careful. Equipment's a really tough one because you want to, when you make your investments in equipment, yes, you want to make it attractive to a buyer, but you don't want to waste money either.
Yeah.
It's a big mistake.
Yeah, and we've seen instances where maintenance hasn't been upkept on equipment, and so a purchaser's bought a business and then suddenly has to invest more money into upgrading the equipment. So Jeremy made a point before we started the video about equally, you need to maintain your equipment, but you don't want to overcapitalise. You've got to put new everything because it doesn't change the value of the business.
Exactly. And there's two different types of equipment spends as well. There's the equipment spend that, and they both get depreciated, but there's the equipment spend that you need to just run and maintain the business. Like an example would be a cafe with a fridge. They need you can't not have your fridge, but it's not going to generate you any extra money by investing in your fridge. So there's that sort of equipment spend, and then there's the equipment spend where it might generate you extra dollars. So the return on investment for that equipment spend has got to be a consideration as well. And an example for that, just for keeping it with a cafe, might be investing in a big flag outside that customers are going to see. That's probably going to generate your return on your investment. So with the sale of the business, that the owner should put themselves in the buyer's shoes there as well. And if they can keep the equipment up to date, so the new owner is going to come in and not have to spend any extra money, then that's going to be attractive. And then also if they can, and they just be careful not to overcapitalise and make sure that you're spending money on stuff that's going to produce you more money in the future.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. That's really cool because we collaborate on business sales and purchases from time to time, and you do see people who are probably getting ready to sell maybe 6 months before, and suddenly they start banking the cash, or suddenly they're dealing with staff issues. But really, a couple of years out, you really need to be thinking about your plan for that day so that there's consistent records. You've got systems in place that are easily transferable. Your business is not dependent on the owner and their reputation creating the function of the business. It can transfer easily over to a new owner, which is really important. So, yeah.
And the other part of that, transferring over easily to a new owner, oftentimes, I wouldn't say all businesses, but a large percentage of businesses have a lease associated with them as well. Yeah. So that's not just retail food businesses, but that you might be leasing a warehouse, you might be leasing office space. Chances are you're leasing something. So where that lease is crucial to the operation of the business, and the example is a retail business, that getting your ducks in a row in advance on the lease is really important. It's amazing how many times we rock up to a business owner, we say, how long have you got left on your lease? And they're like, I don't know. It's like, can you send us a copy? I don't have it.
Yeah, it actually affects the finance side of it as well, because
really?
a lender's going to create a loan term shorter than the length of your lease. So if there's 2 years left, then you need to get the full loan repaid before that date, and then that affects your servicing and how much you can borrow. So again, there's a thing that you sort of early.
Yeah, and it saves time in the sales process as well, because most of the time where the lease is important, there'll be an expiry date, say it's 2022. Most of the time the purchaser is going to want an extension to the lease, and most of the time we don't know if the landlord's going to give that.
Yeah.
So if you have that sorted out in advance, again, you're putting yourself in the shoes of the purchaser, and you got your lease sorted out in advance, then it just makes the sales process so much easier. And that's the key thing is putting yourself in the shoes of the purchaser for sure.
Yeah, and in some industries, there are a number of businesses that the buyers can choose from, and so the easier that you make it for them to buy your business,
it's like the CV for job recruiters. If you've ever done recruitment or anything like that, you have, right? Yeah. So where you're sitting as a recruiter and you're thumbing through CVs, even if the person's great, most of them are terrible, right? Most of the CVs are terrible.
They are.
So you're thumbing through and they're all bad, and then the one that's well formatted and good just stands out, and that's the one you read.
Yeah.
And and that essentially is a competitive landscape, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with business sales. If you think that most people aren't doing this stuff, then it's quite easy to make yourself stand out.
Yeah.
Just on the intangible assets as well, in terms of lots of businesses that I see, they might be running perfectly and everything like that, but they haven't done basic simple things in terms of the intangible assets. They haven't got themselves a good profile on Google. They haven't, just really simple things that you can do these days quite easily. Yeah. That sort of stuff's not up to speed. And again, that's easy stuff, and it just helps build the picture for the business. But it may it depends on the type of business, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's loads of food for thought for you. But I'm going to leave some contact information for Jeremy, so that if you want to extend the conversation and figure out what you need to do to get started now, if that's the end goal for your business plan, then you can go straight to him and pick his brains a bit more.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Jeremy.
No worries. Cheers, Jeremy.